The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched wide like a giant bowl made of silver metal. Thousands of alien beings sat in rows that went up and up until they disappeared into shadows. At the very center, on a small platform, stood Ambassador Chen Wei. She was the only human in the entire massive room. Chen looked small compared to the creatures around her. The Kethai were twice as tall as any human, with thick gray skin like stone and forearms that ended in sharp claws. The Zephyrians looked like walking crystals that sparkled with inner light. The Drekmiri had long necks and eyes that glowed red in the dim light. Dozens of other species filled the seats, all of them looking down at the lone human woman. For 3 long years, Chen had come to this place. She had asked the same things over and over. She wanted humans to have equal rights in the council. She wanted fair trade deals where humans could sell their goods without paying huge taxes. She wanted other species to treat humans like thinking beings instead of clever animals. Each time the council had said no, they made excuses. They said humans were too young as a species. They said humans were too emotional and could not be trusted with important decisions. They said humans needed to prove themselves worthy first. Today felt different. Chen could sense it in the way the aliens whispered to each other. She could see it in how they looked at her with tired eyes. They were done with what they called the human problem. High Counselor Vexthar stood up from his golden throne. He was a Dominion leader, with purple scales that reflected the light like oil on water. His voice boomed across the hall when he spoke. "The Council has reached its final decision about the human question," he said. His words echoed off the walls. "We have been patient. We have listened to your requests. But patience has limits." Chen stood perfectly still. Her face showed nothing. Inside, her heart was beating fast, but she had learned long ago not to let aliens see human emotions. "Humans will accept their proper place in the galaxy," Vexithar continued. "You will remain in your home system. All trade with other worlds will go through council-approved companies. You will send no more ships beyond your borders without permission. You will accept junior status in all dealings." The hall was completely quiet. Even the soft humming sounds that some species made when they breathed seemed to stop. "If humans refuse these terms," Vexthar said, "then humans will be cut off completely. No trade, no communication, no contact with any council species. Your people will be alone in space forever." Chen knew this was coming. The signs had been clear for months. The council was tired of dealing with humans who asked for things above their station. They wanted the problem to go away. Other human ambassadors might have argued. They might have begged for more time or better terms. They might have tried to negotiate some small compromise. Chen did none of these things. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device. It looked like a simple communication unit, the kind humans used to talk to their ships. She pressed a button and spoke clearly into it. "Protocol 7, all stations." That was all she said. 2 words and 2 numbers. The alien counselors looked confused. Some leaned forward to hear better. Others whispered questions to their neighbors. Protocol 7 meant nothing to them. Chen put the device back in her pocket. She looked up at Vexthar and nodded once, very slowly. Then she turned around and began walking toward the exit. "Ambassador Chen," called out Counselor Thek of the Rigelian Collective, "do you accept our terms?" Chen did not stop walking. She did not turn around. She did not answer. "The council demands a response," shouted another voice. Chen reached the great doors that led out of the hall. They were 30 feet tall and made of some alien metal that changed colors. As she walked through them, her footsteps echoed in the silence behind her. She had not said yes to their demands. She had not said no. She had said nothing at all. In the hall, thousands of alien beings sat in confused silence. They had expected tears or anger or desperate pleading. Humans were supposed to be emotional creatures who could not control their feelings. Instead, they had watched a human woman receive the worst possible news with perfect calm. She had spoken 2 simple phrases into a device and then left without another word. High Counselor Vexthar felt a strange uneasiness in his stomach. In all his years of dealing with younger species, none had ever reacted this way. Usually they fought the decision or collapsed in despair. "What is Protocol 7? Asked Counselor Zethai of the Aquatic Alliance. No one knew. No human had ever mentioned it before. "Perhaps it is some kind of surrender signal," suggested another counselor. "Or maybe a call for help to their homeworld," said a third Vexus. Thar stood looking at the empty doorway where Chen had disappeared. Something about her reaction worried him. Humans were supposed to be predictable. They were supposed to be desperate for council approval. The woman who had just left did not seem desperate at all. Continue with regular business, Bexthar announced to the hall. The human matter is settled. But as the council moved on to other topics, many of the councillors found it hard to focus. They kept thinking about the human ambassador and her strange calm reaction. They kept wondering what Protocol 7 meant. In the human quarter of the council station, Chen walked quickly to her temporary office. Her assistant, a young man named David, looked up as she entered. "How did it go?" he asked. "Pack everything," Chen said. "We leave in 2 hours. Should I contact Earth for new instructions?" David asked. Chen shook her head. "Earth already knows what happened. Just pack." David had worked with Chen for 2 years. He had never seen her like this. She was always calm, but this was different. This was the calm of someone who had been expecting exactly what happened. "Ambassador," David said carefully. "What is Protocol 7? Chen stopped packing files and looked at him. For just a moment, her careful diplomatic mask slipped. David saw something in her eyes that made him step backward. "Protocol 7, she said quietly, "is what we do when diplomacy ends." 2 hours later, the human diplomatic mission left the council station on a small transport ship. They took everything with them. They left behind clean, empty rooms with no trace that humans had ever been there. The council thought this was normal. Defeated species usually went home to report their failure. They had no idea that Protocol 7 was already spreading across the galaxy like ripples in a pond. They had no idea that every human in council space had just received the same simple message. They had no idea that everything was about to change. The transport ship carrying Chen and her staff disappeared into hyperspace, heading toward the edge of known space. Behind them, the council station continued its normal business. In 48 hours, the council would realize they had made the biggest mistake in galactic history. But for now, they sat in their great hall and congratulated themselves on solving the human problem, once and for all. 2 days after Ambassador Chen left the council chambers, Captain Mordak of the HFY trade fleet noticed something strange. The human cargo ship that always docked at Base 7 was gone. This was unusual because the humans followed very strict schedules. They arrived every 10 days with supplies for the station's life support systems. Mordak walked to the bay and found it completely empty. No ship, no cargo, no humans. Even the small office where the human traders usually waited was cleared out. The desk was clean, the walls were bare, and there was no sign that anyone had ever worked there. "When did the human ship leave?" he asked the bay controller. "Yesterday morning," the controller replied. "They finished unloading their cargo and just left. Didn't say when they'd be back." This was very strange. Human traders always confirmed their next delivery date before leaving. They were known for being extremely reliable about schedules. Mordak decided not to worry about it. Maybe the humans were just upset about the council's decision and needed time to accept their new situation. He had no way of knowing that the same thing was happening at thousands of locations across council space on the crystal farms of Zephyria Prime. The human maintenance teams had packed their equipment and departed in the middle of the night. The Zephyrians woke up to find empty dormitories and workshops. The humans had left behind detailed instructions for operating their atmospheric processors, but the machines were incredibly complex. The Zephyrians had always let the humans handle the technical work. In the mining systems controlled by the Drakmiri Empire, human engineering teams simply vanished. They left behind their massive gravity manipulation devices, but took all the control systems and technical manuals. The Drakmiri miners arrived for work to find machines they didn't know how to operate. On the council's main communication relay station, the night shift supervisor discovered that the entire human technical crew had resigned. They had submitted their papers electronically and left on the midnight transport. The humans had been responsible for maintaining the quantum relay systems that allowed instant communication across the galaxy. At first, no one was too concerned. Humans had been doing important work, but they were supposed to be easily replaceable. Other species had built the galaxy's civilization. Surely they could handle whatever the humans had been doing. But within a week, problems started appearing everywhere. The first crisis hit the Zephyrian crystal farms. The atmospheric processors that kept the delicate crystals growing began breaking down. Error messages appeared in human languages that the Zephyrians couldn't read. The machines required constant small adjustments that only the human technicians had known how to make. The Zephyrian engineers tried to fix the problems themselves. They opened the machines and found technology that was far more advanced than anything they had ever seen. The processors didn't just control air and temperature. They managed electromagnetic fields, quantum fluctuations, and energy patterns that the Zephyrians didn't even have names for. How did the humans build machines this sophisticated? Wondered Chief Engineer Listal as she stared at a processor's inner workings. The technology was at least 50 years ahead of anything the Zephyrians had developed. On the HFY mining worlds, the gravity manipulators started failing one by one. These machines allowed the miners to extract precious metals from deep underground without digging huge holes. Without them, the mining operations would have to go back to methods they hadn't used in centuries. The HFY had always assumed the machines were simple tools. When their engineers examined them closely, they discovered quantum gravitic field generators that required knowledge of physics the HFY didn't possess. The humans had somehow built machines that could control gravity itself at a level that should have been impossible. The biggest shock came at the Council's communication center. The quantum relay system began experiencing cascading failures. Messages that should have crossed the galaxy in seconds started taking hours. Some communications disappeared completely. The alien technicians tried desperately to fix the system. They discovered that the human-built components were integrated into every part of the network. The humans hadn't just maintained the system. They had redesigned it completely using principles that no other species understood. "Sir," reported Technician Valmore to the station commander, "we can't repair this. The humans built it using quantum mechanics we've never seen before. We don't even understand how it works, let alone how to fix it." Commander Zaltek stared at the reports. "What do you mean you don't understand it? Humans are a junior species. Their technology should be simple." "That's what we thought too, sir. But these machines are more advanced than anything in our databases. It's like the humans were using science that's decades ahead of ours." As the days passed, more systems began failing. Human-built medical devices in council hospitals stopped working. Human-designed computer programs that managed trade routes crashed. Human-created artificial intelligence systems that had been quietly running background operations simply shut down. The council members slowly realized that humans had been far more important to their civilization than anyone had understood. They hadn't just been workers and traders. They had been quietly keeping essential systems running throughout council space. Ambassador Thek of the Rigelian Collective called an emergency meeting. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to discuss the growing crisis. "Where are the humans?" demanded Councillor Veltar of the Hegemony. "We need them back to fix these systems." "They've disappeared completely," reported Admiral Gexhai of the Council Fleet. "We've sent scouts to every system where humans were known to operate. We found empty colonies, abandoned research stations, and deserted trading posts. But no humans." "That's impossible," said Councillor Mordeth. "You can't hide an entire species. They must be somewhere." "Our sensors can't find them," the Admiral replied. "It's like they never existed." The truth was even stranger than the council members could imagine. Every human facility in council space had been completely evacuated. Ships, people, equipment, even garbage. Everything had been taken. The humans had left behind only the buildings themselves, and even those had been stripped of anything useful. The evacuation had been planned perfectly. Humans from thousands of different locations had somehow coordinated their departure down to the hour. They had all left at the same time, following the same mysterious protocol. More disturbing was what the scouts found when they investigated human colony worlds. The planets weren't just empty, they were clean. All the human settlements had been completely dismantled. Every piece of technology, every building, every trace of human presence had been removed. The worlds looked like no one had ever lived there at all. How did they move so much so fast? Wondered Admiral Gexhai. Some of those colonies had millions of people and massive industrial complexes. You can't evacuate that overnight. But somehow the humans had done exactly that. High Counselor Vexthar stood in his private office looking out at the stars. For the first time in his long career, he felt genuinely worried. The council had thought they were dealing with a weak species that needed their permission to survive. Instead, it seemed like they had been dealing with beings who were far more capable than they had ever revealed. "Find them," he ordered his aide. "Send ships to every system in the galaxy if necessary. Offer them whatever they want. Full council membership, exclusive trade rights, anything. We need them back." But space is vast, and the humans had vanished more completely than any species in recorded history. The Council's ships searched for weeks without finding even a trace of where humanity had gone. Meanwhile, the technological failures continued spreading throughout Council space. Essential systems that had quietly depended on human knowledge began breaking down one by one. The Council had thought they were getting rid of a troublesome junior species. Instead, they had driven away the beings who had been secretly holding their entire civilization together. 3 months after the humans disappeared, the galactic economy was collapsing like a house made of cards in a strong wind. What had started as small technical problems had grown into a crisis that threatened every major civilization in Council space. High Counselor Vexithar sat in his emergency command center, surrounded by reports of disaster from across the galaxy. His purple scales had lost their shine and turned a dull gray color. He hadn't slept properly in weeks. "Read me the latest reports," he ordered his aide, Counselor Jethai. Jethai picked up a data pad with shaking hands. "The Zephyrian crystal farms are operating at only 12% capacity. Without the atmospheric processors, most of their crystals are dying. The Zephyrians estimate complete crop failure within 2 months." "Continue," Vexthar said quietly. "The Kethai mining operations have shut down completely. Without the gravity manipulators, they can't extract deep minerals safely. Their entire economy was built around those machines. What about the communication network? Getting worse every day. Some sectors are now completely cut off. Messages to the outer rim systems take 3 days instead of 3 minutes. The quantum relay network is failing faster than our technicians can repair it." Vexithar closed his eyes. Each report was worse than the last. "How many Council species are asking for emergency aid?" 47, sir. And the number keeps growing." The truth was becoming impossible to ignore. The humans hadn't just been workers in the galactic economy. They had been its secret foundation. Their technology, their knowledge, their problem-solving abilities had become so deeply integrated into Council civilization that their absence was causing everything to fall apart. The worst part was how cleverly they had hidden their importance. For 3 years, human ambassadors had come to the Council asking for basic rights and fair treatment. They had presented themselves as a young species that needed guidance and protection. Every Council member had believed that humans were dependent on them for survival. Now it was obvious that the opposite had been true all along. Dr. Kelmoth, the Council's chief technology advisor, had spent weeks studying the failed human systems. His report painted a picture that terrified the Council leadership. The humans weren't just using advanced technology, he explained to the emergency assembly. They were using scientific principles that we don't understand. Their machines work on theories that are decades ahead of our current knowledge. "Give a specific examples," demanded Counselor. Veltar. Dr. Kelmoth pulled up a holographic display showing the inside of a human atmospheric processor. "Look at this quantum field generator. It controls molecular behavior at the subatomic level. We knew these machines worked, but we never examined how they worked. The science involved is so advanced that we can't even figure out the basic operating principles." The assembly was silent as they stared at the complex diagrams. "It gets worse," Dr. Kelmoth continued. "The humans built these machines using materials that we thought were impossible to create. These quantum crystals shouldn't exist according to our physics. Yet somehow the humans not only made them, they made them cheaply enough to use in ordinary industrial equipment." Counselor Thek raised a trembling hand. "Are you saying that human technology is more advanced than ours?" "I'm saying that human technology is more advanced than what we thought was possible," Dr. Kelmoth replied. "Based on what we've found, they were operating at a level that's at least 50 years ahead of our best research." The implications hit the assembly like a physical blow. If humans were that far ahead technologically, why had they spent 3 years begging for basic rights? Why had they presented themselves as a junior species that needed Council approval for everything? Admiral Gexai stood up slowly. "What if they were studying us?" she asked. "What if the whole thing was an intelligence operation?" The hall erupted in nervous chatter. The idea was too frightening to consider seriously, but it explained so much. Why would an advanced species pretend to be primitive? Why would they integrate their technology into Council systems so thoroughly? Why would they position themselves in critical infrastructure throughout the galaxy? "Order, order!" shouted Vexthar, but his voice lacked its usual authority. He was thinking the same thing as everyone else. The humans had been perfectly positioned to cripple Council civilization. They had access to communication networks, industrial systems, medical facilities, and transportation hubs. If they had wanted to attack, they could have done incredible damage. Instead, they had simply left. They had taken their technology and their knowledge and vanished completely. They had let Council systems fail naturally rather than sabotaging them. "Sir," said Jethai quietly, "there's something else you need to know." Vexthar looked at his aide with tired eyes. "What now?" "The human evacuation wasn't just coordinated. It was impossible. We've calculated the logistics of moving that many people and that much equipment. Even with the most advanced ships, it should have taken months to evacuate all the human facilities." "How long did it actually take?" "Based on the evidence, less than 48 hours. Every human facility in Council space was completely evacuated in the same 2-day period. That includes colonies with millions of people and industrial complexes the size of cities." Dr. Kelmoth leaned forward. "We're not just talking about advanced technology here. We're talking about capabilities that seem to violate the known laws of physics. How do you move 1 million people and all their equipment in 2 days without anyone noticing until they're already gone?" The answer was disturbing. Either the humans had transportation technology, far beyond anything the Council had ever imagined, or they had been planning their departure for so long that they had been secretly moving people and equipment for months or years. Both possibilities suggested that the humans had been playing a much deeper game than anyone had realized. "We need to find them," Vexthar said finally. "Send more ships. Expand the search. Offer them anything they want. Full Council membership, exclusive trade deals, territorial concessions. Whatever it takes to bring them back." "Sir," Admiral Gexhai said carefully, "what if they don't want to come back? What if this was their plan all along?" Vexthar didn't answer immediately. The question hung in the air like a bad smell. If the humans had planned this from the beginning, if they had deliberately integrated themselves into Council systems, just so they could leave and cause maximum damage, then the Council was dealing with an intelligence that was far more sophisticated than they had ever imagined. "Keep searching," he said finally, "and prepare contingency plans for long-term technological collapse. If we can't find the humans and convince them to return, we may need to rebuild our entire civilization from scratch." As the Council members filed out of the emergency assembly, many of them were thinking the same dark thought. For 3 years, they had believed they were managing a junior species that wanted their approval. Now it seemed possible that the humans had been managing them instead. The Council had thought they were solving the human problem by forcing humanity to accept junior status or face isolation. Instead, they might have been dancing to human plans all along, and now the humans were gone, leaving behind a galactic civilization that was slowly falling apart. Without their hidden support, the arrogance that had led the Council to dismiss humanity as a junior species was now threatening to destroy everything they had built over thousands of years. But still, no one knew where the humans had gone or how to bring them back. Captain Zelmoth of the Drakmiri survey ship Void Walker had been searching for the missing humans for 6 months. His orders were simple: explore every unmapped system beyond the galactic rim and look for any signs of human activity. So far, he had found nothing but empty space and dead worlds. The outer rim was a dangerous place. Ancient radiation storms made navigation difficult. Rogue planets drifted in the darkness between stars. Most species avoided the area completely, because there was nothing out there worth the risk. That's why Zelmoth almost ignored the energy readings his sensors picked up near a red giant star in Sector 007. The readings were probably just radiation from the dying star. But his orders said to investigate everything, no matter how unlikely. "Set course for the energy source," he told his pilot. "We'll take a quick look and move on." As the Void Walker approached the red giant, the energy readings grew stronger. Soon they were so powerful that Zelmoth had to check his instruments twice to make sure they were working correctly. "Captain," called his science officer, "these readings don't make sense. The energy output is too organized to be natural. It's like something is controlling the star's radiation." Zelmoth felt his heart start beating faster. "Can you tell what's causing it?" "Unknown, sir. But whatever it is, it's massive. The energy patterns suggest construction on a scale I've never seen before." As they got closer to the star system, Zelmoth's instruments began detecting something impossible: metal structures in space, huge ones, so large that his computer couldn't calculate their exact size. Put it on the main screen, he ordered. What appeared on the view screen made every member of the crew stop breathing. A Dyson sphere, a complete shell of metal and energy collectors wrapped around the entire star. The construction was so vast that it was hard to understand what they were looking at. The sphere was bigger than most planets, bigger than some star systems. It completely surrounded the red giant, capturing every bit of energy the star produced. But that wasn't the most shocking thing. The sphere was covered with human ships. Thousands of them. Maybe tens of thousands. They moved in perfect formation around the massive structure, some the size of small cities. The ships were sleek and advanced, far more sophisticated than anything humans had ever shown in Council space. "Captain," whispered the pilot, "those are human designs, but they're not like any human ships we've ever seen." Zelmoth stared at the display in shock. The ships looked human, but they were clearly built using technology decades ahead of anything humans had revealed to the Council. Some of them seemed to bend space around themselves. Others appeared to phase in and out of normal reality. "How long would it take to build something like this?" he asked his science officer. The Drakmiri checked his calculations twice before answering. "With current galactic technology? At least 500 years. Maybe 1,000. And that's if you had the resources of the entire Council working together. What about with the technology we're seeing here?" "Unknown, sir. This level of engineering is beyond anything in our databases." Zelmoth realized that they were looking at proof that everything the Council thought they knew about humans was wrong. The humans hadn't been a young species learning to use advanced technology. They had been an incredibly advanced civilization pretending to be primitive. The Dyson sphere represented engineering capabilities that no Council species possessed. The organized movement of thousands of ships showed coordination that required impossible levels of communication technology. The humans hadn't just been hiding their true abilities. They had been operating at a level that made the entire Council look like children playing with simple toys. "Sir, the communications," officer called out urgently. "We're being scanned. Multiple sources. The scan intensity is unlike anything I've ever seen." Before Zelmoth could respond, his instruments detected movement. Human ships were appearing around the Void Walker, not approaching from a distance, simply materializing out of empty space as if they had been invisible. "How are they doing that?" demanded the science officer. "I don't know," Zelmoth replied. "Our sensors show nothing until they choose to appear." Within minutes, the Drakmiri ship was surrounded by a dozen human vessels. Each one was larger and more advanced than anything in the Council fleet. They moved without any visible engines, using technology that seemed to ignore the normal laws of physics. "Incoming message," reported the communications officer. "Put it through." A human face appeared on the screen. The man was middle-aged with calm eyes and a slight smile. He wore a simple uniform that Zelmoth didn't recognize. "Drakmiri vessel," the human said. "You are in restricted space. State your purpose." Zelmoth gathered his courage. "I am Captain Zelmoth of the survey ship Voidwalker. We are searching for human refugees on behalf of the Galactic Council. We wish to negotiate their return." The human's smile widened slightly. "Refugees? How interesting. There are no refugees here, Captain. Only humans returning home." "Home? But this system isn't on any star charts." "How long have humans been here?" "Long enough," the human replied. "Captain, your presence has been noted and your message will be delivered to the appropriate authorities. You have 1 hour to leave this system. If you remain longer, we will consider your presence hostile." "Wait," Zelmoth said quickly. "The Council wants to negotiate. We can offer full membership, trade agreements, anything humans want. The galaxy needs human technology to function. The galaxy functioned for millions of years before humans appeared in Council space," the human said calmly. "We're sure it will learn to function again without us. But the failing systems, the economic collapse, surely you didn't intend for entire civilizations to suffer." For the first time, the human's expression grew serious. "Captain, the Council chose to treat humans as inferior beings suitable only for junior status. The consequences of that choice belong to the Council, not to us. If you return, humans can have equal status, full representation, equal voting rights." "Equal rights were what we asked for 3 years ago," the human replied. "The Council chose to respond with ultimatums and threats. Now we choose our own path." Zelmoth felt desperate. The scale of what he was seeing, the Dyson sphere, the advanced ships, the obvious technological superiority, made it clear that humans could solve the Council's problems easily. But it also made it clear that humans no longer needed anything the Council could offer. "What about mercy?" Zelmoth asked. "Billions of beings are suffering because of the technological failures." The human was quiet for a moment. "Check your cargo hold, Captain. You'll find something there that wasn't there before." Zelmoth sent a crew member to investigate. The report came back quickly. Their cargo hold now contained dozens of containers filled with medical supplies, food synthesizers, and basic technological devices. "All human-made. Consider it a gift," the human said. "We bear no hatred toward individual council members, but we will not return to a system that considers us inferior." "Sir," Zelmoth's science officer whispered urgently, "the human ships are charging weapons. Energy levels are off our scales." The human on the screen seemed to hear the whisper. "Captain, your hour begins now. I suggest you use it wisely." The communication ended. Zelmoth stared at the blank screen, then at the readings showing the impossible energy levels surrounding his ship. The human weapons could probably destroy his vessel without any effort at all. "Set course for Council space," he ordered. "Maximum speed." As the Voidwalker fled the system, Zelmoth looked back at the Dyson sphere one last time. The structure was so large that it was hard to see where it ended and space began. Thousands of human ships continued their complex dance around it, organizing resources and energy on a scale that boggled the mind. The humans hadn't fled to some hiding place in the Outer Rim. They had gone home to a home they had built, while the Council debated whether they deserved basic rights. And that home was more advanced than anything the Council had ever imagined. "Possible, sir," his communications officer said quietly. "Should I prepare a report for the Council?" Zelmoth thought about what he had seen. A Dyson sphere that represented thousands of years of advanced engineering. Ships that could bend space and time, weapons that could probably destroy planets. Technology that made the Council's best achievements look primitive. "Yes," he said finally. "Prepare the report, but I don't think anyone is going to believe it." The Voidwalker jumped to hyperspace, carrying news that would change how the Council understood their place in the galaxy forever. Exactly 1 year after Ambassador Chen walked out of the Council chambers, every screen in Council space lit up at the same moment. The transmission came through on every frequency, in every language, broadcast simultaneously to billions of beings across the galaxy. It was impossible to block, impossible to trace, and impossible to ignore. High Counselor Vexthar was in his private office when his communication system activated by itself. He tried to shut it off, but the controls wouldn't respond. The screen flickered to life and Ambassador Chen's face appeared. She looked different. The humble diplomat who had once begged for human rights was gone. This Chen sat in what appeared to be a command center with vast windows, showing impossible construction projects under an alien sun. Her uniform was different too, sleek and advanced with symbols that no Council database could identify. Behind her, massive machines moved materials the size of buildings. Ships that looked like flowing metal drifted through the air without any visible means of propulsion. The technology visible in the background was clearly centuries ahead of anything the Council possessed. "Esteemed members of the Galactic Council," Chen began, her voice carrying an authority it had never possessed before. "You wish to know where humanity went. I am here to provide that answer." Across the galaxy, beings stopped what they were doing to watch. In the Council chambers, emergency sessions were called. On every world where the technological failures had caused suffering, people gathered around screens to hear what the humans had to say. "We went home," Chen continued, "to a home we built while you debated our worthiness. For over 300 years we have been watching your civilizations, learning your languages, studying your cultures. You knew us as the species that appeared 50 years ago asking for trade relationships and basic rights. That was our diplomatic corps, a small fraction of our people chosen to interact with your societies. The revelation hit the Council like a physical blow. 50 years. The humans had only been in contact with the Council for 50 years. But Chen was claiming they had been watching for 3 centuries. "You saw us as primitive newcomers desperate for your approval," she said. "We saw you as an interesting case study in galactic politics. While our diplomats requested basic recognition, our scientists were cataloging your strengths and weaknesses. While we asked for fair trade agreements, our engineers were studying your technology and finding it centuries behind our own development." In the Council chambers, Vexthar felt his legs grow weak. Every assumption they had made about humanity was crumbling in real time. Chen gestured to something off-screen, and the view expanded to show more of the human facility. Vast cities stretched to the horizon under dome skies. Ships the size of mountains moved through the air in perfect silence. What looked like artificial suns provided light and energy on a scale that defied imagination. You wondered how we evacuated our facility so quickly, Chen said. The answer is that most of our people were never in council space to begin with. The colonies and research stations you knew about were temporary outposts. Our real civilization exists in systems you never knew we had discovered. The camera view shifted again, showing what looked like multiple Dyson spheres in the distance. Not just one, but dozens of them, each one representing the complete harnessing of a star's energy. The engineering required was beyond anything the Council had ever attempted. For 3 centuries we built and grew while staying hidden from your notice, Chen explained. We developed technology that you would consider impossible. We created ships that can fold space, weapons that can reshape matter at the molecular level, and machines that can construct planets from raw materials. Admiral Gexhai, watching from the Council Fleet headquarters, felt sick to her stomach. The human ships that had appeared around Captain Zelmoth's vessel hadn't been their military fleet. They had been ordinary civilian craft that were still more advanced than the Council's best warships. You ask why we hid our true nature for so long, Chen continued. The answer is simple. We wanted to understand you before revealing ourselves. We needed to know whether your species could be trusted with knowledge of our existence. The implication was clear and terrifying. The humans hadn't been asking for the Council's help. They had been testing the Council's character. For 50 years we offered you partnership as equals, Chen said, her voice growing colder. We presented ourselves as a young species seeking guidance, hoping that you would treat us with the respect that any thinking beings deserve. Instead, you chose to see us as inferiors worthy only of junior status. Behind Chen, massive displays showed images from across Council space. Failing atmospheric processors on Zephyria, broken gravity manipulators on Kethai mining worlds, communication networks crashing throughout the galaxy. The humans had been watching the consequences of their departure. You assumed that because we requested your approval, we needed your approval, she said. You confused our politeness for weakness and our diplomacy for desperation. When we offered you partnership, you responded with arrogance. When we asked for equality, you offered us servitude. Counselor Thek, watching from his office on Rigel Prime, realized that every human request had been a test. Every diplomatic meeting had been an opportunity for the Council to prove their character. And the Council had failed every single test. Now you face the consequences of your choice, Chen continued. The technology you depended on is failing because you never understood how it worked. The systems you took for granted are breaking down because you never learned to maintain them. The prosperity you enjoyed was built on foundations you never bothered to examine. The view behind Chen shifted to show vast warehouses filled with supplies. Food, medicine, replacement parts for critical systems, everything the Council needed to survive the technological collapse. We do not wish suffering on any thinking beings, she said. Throughout Council space you will find supply caches hidden in locations your governments will soon discover. These contain enough resources to help your civilization survive, while you learn to rebuild without our assistance. It was the final insult wrapped in apparent mercy. The humans were treating the Council like children who needed to be protected from their own poor decisions. You have a choice to make, Chen said, her image becoming more serious. You can continue the path that led you here, ruling through arrogance, treating other species as inferior, demanding respect while showing none. If you choose this path, you will face the future alone. She paused, letting the words sink in. Or you can learn from your mistakes. You can build a new galactic community based on mutual respect and genuine equality. You can prove that advanced civilizations can grow beyond the need to dominate others. The view expanded one final time, showing the full scope of human civilization. Hundreds of star systems with technology that looked like magic, ships that moved through dimensions the Council didn't know existed, cities that floated in space without any visible support. We will be watching, Chen said. If you choose wisdom over arrogance, if you choose cooperation over domination, then perhaps someday we can meet again as true equals. But understand this clearly. We will never again accept the role of junior partners in a community we helped to build. The transmission began to fade, But Chen's voice remained clear. The era of human diplomacy is over. What comes next depends entirely on the choices you make from this moment forward. The screens went dark, leaving the council in stunned silence. High Counselor Vexthar sat in his office staring at the blank screen. Everything the council had built over thousands of years had been undermined by beings they had dismissed as primitive newcomers. The humans hadn't been conquered by council superiority. They had been studying council weakness, and now they were gone, leaving behind a galaxy that had to learn to survive without the secret help of beings who had been pretending to need help themselves. Within hours, supply caches began appearing throughout council space. The coordinates arrived through channels that shouldn't have existed, in messages that bypassed all security systems. Food for starving colonies, medicine for failing hospitals, basic technology to replace the sophisticated systems that were breaking down. It was charity from beings who had once begged for basic rights, help from a species that had been denied equality, mercy from creatures the council had tried to force into permanent servitude. The council faced a choice that would determine the future of galactic civilization. They could learn humility and rebuild their society based on genuine respect for all thinking beings, or they could continue their arrogant ways and face a future where the most advanced species in the galaxy wanted nothing to do with them. Either way, they would never again make the mistake of confusing politeness for weakness or diplomacy for desperation. The humans had departed in silence, but their message was now perfectly clear. Arrogance has consequences, and those consequences can last forever. Ambassador Kretok walked through the empty halls of the Terran embassy on Centauri Station. His four legs clicked against the polished floor, echoing in the silence. This was wrong. The humans should have been here an hour ago for the trade meeting. The conference room was dark. No coffee smell filled the air like it usually did. No human voices laughed in the corners. No one sat at the long table where they always argued about mining rights and shipping lanes. Kretok touched his communication device. Security, this is Ambassador Kretok. The humans are late for our meeting. Sir, we've been trying to reach you. The security officer's voice crackled through. It's not just the embassy. All the humans are gone. What do you mean, gone? Every human on the station. Every human ship in the docking bay. They're all gone. They left during the night cycle. Kretok's scales turned pale, a sign of confusion in his species. He walked to the embassy's main office. The desks were clean. The computers were off. Even the small plant that Ambassador Chen always watered was gone. On the main desk, he found a single paper. Real paper. The kind humans still used sometimes. It had one line. Check the moon. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. The human colony on Kepler 442 stood empty. The houses were locked, the streets were quiet, and the fusion reactors were powered down safely. On the ice world of Proxima 3, the human research station was abandoned. The equipment was packed away, the data servers were wiped clean, and the heating systems were turned off. The Galactic Council called an emergency meeting. Chairman Vorthax, a massive creature with 6 arms and crystalline skin, stood at the center of the council chamber. Around him sat representatives from 43 different species. The humans have left, Vorthax announced. Every single one of them. No warnings, no explanations. Good riddance, said Ambassador Zek from the Altarian fleet. They were always complaining about something. Mining rights, trade agreements, safety protocols. Maybe now we can have meetings without their emotional outbursts. Several others laughed. The consortium representative, a blob of sentient gas in a containment suit, pulsed with amusement. They probably couldn't handle real civilization. Let them run back to whatever hole they're hiding in. Should we search for them? Asked a younger council member. Why? Vorthax waved 2 of his arms dismissively. If they want to throw a tantrum and leave, let them. The galaxy will continue without them. We've managed for millions of years before they arrived. But Ambassador Kretok wasn't laughing. He remembered something Ambassador Chen had said last month. Something about critical systems and warnings. He had filed the report away without reading it, marking it as low-priority human concerns. 3 days after the humans vanished, the first ship arrived at Earth. The blue and green planet still turned in space, still beautiful, still alive. But the cities were empty. New York, Beijing, Lagos, Mumbai all stood silent. The buildings were intact, the roads were clear, but no humans remained. Captain Threll of the survey ship descended to Times Square. The giant screens were dark. The streets that once held millions now held only wind and the first fallen leaves of autumn. His team spread out, searching for any sign of what happened. "Captain," his science officer called, "you need to see this." She led him to Central Park, where the grass had been carefully cut into letters visible from orbit. The message was simple: you were warned. Warned about what? Threll asked. His science officer pulled up her data pad. "I'm checking the Council's records. In the last 50 years, humans filed over 3,000 reports about critical system failures, treaty violations, and safety concerns. And every single one was marked as non-priority. Every warning was ignored. The moon was next. Earth's ancient companion had been turned into a museum by the humans, celebrating their journey to the stars. Now, carved into the sea of tranquility where humans first walked beyond their world, were more words. These were huge, visible from Earth with basic telescopes. You were warned. We kept our promise. Now keep yours." Vorthax read the report about Earth and laughed. Dramatic until the end. "You were warned. About what? Their constant complaints about trade routes? Their whining about safety codes? Their obsession with fair treatment?" He made a dismissive gesture. "The galaxy's economy has never been stronger. Our fleets have never been more powerful. What could the humans possibly have been doing that mattered?" But Kretok was reading through old reports on his personal terminal. Report after report from human engineers, scientists, and administrators. Warnings about navigation beacons, concerns about AI systems, notes about infrastructure maintenance. Each one was stamped with the same mark: non-priority. "No action required, Chairman," Kretok said slowly. "Perhaps we should review these warnings more carefully." "Waste of time," Vorthax replied. The humans always exaggerated dangers. They saw problems everywhere. It's why they were so exhausting to work with. The first real sign of trouble came from the outer colonies. 3 cargo ships went missing on the Kepler trade route, one of the busiest and safest in known space. Then 5 more. Then 12. "Navigation beacon K-47 has stopped transmitting," reported the traffic controller. "Send a maintenance crew," the supervisor said. I did. "They can't find it." It's like it was never there. By the end of the first week, half the beacons on the Kepler route were dark. Ships started taking longer routes, adding months to their journeys. Some never arrived at all. The Zephrani Empire noticed problems next. Their agricultural worlds produced food for a dozen species. The vast farms were run by AI systems that controlled everything from soil moisture to harvest timing. One morning, every AI system crashed at the same moment. "Get them back online," ordered the Zephrani Prime. "We can't," the technicians reported. "The base code is corrupted. We need to rebuild everything from scratch." "How long will that take?" "Years, maybe decades. We don't fully understand how the systems were built anymore." In the old files, they found notes from human programmers. Hundreds of patches and fixes dated over the last 30 years. The humans had been maintaining the code, fixing problems before they became disasters. The last update was dated the day before they left. The Altarian fleet, pride of the galaxy's military forces, discovered their own problems when their newest battleship suddenly went dark during a routine patrol. The fusion core had shut down. Then another ship lost power. Then another. Deep in the safety protocols, they found human-designed software. Software that monitored the fusion reactions and prevented catastrophic failures. Software that expired exactly 72 hours after the last human biosignature went offline. "Can we fix it?" the fleet admiral asked. "We're trying," the engineers replied. "But the humans wrote this code. We don't understand half of it." Ambassador Kretok found something in the abandoned human embassy that made his scales turn completely white with fear. It was a hidden file in Ambassador Chen's personal computer, which had been left behind. The file was named Project Avalanche. Inside were thousands of documents, records of every critical system the humans had been secretly maintaining. Every disaster they had prevented, every problem they had fixed without asking for credit or payment. The list was staggering. Navigation beacons, AI systems, fusion safety protocols, disease containment, market stabilization, border security, communication networks, water purification, air recycling. The list went on for pages. At the bottom was a personal note from Ambassador Chen. "If you're reading this, then we're gone. For 200 years we tried to be partners. We shared our knowledge, our strength, our hope. In return, we were called primitive. Our warnings were ignored. Our contributions were forgotten. We were tolerated, not valued, so we're leaving. We've shut down everything we were maintaining in secret. You'll have to manage on your own now. This isn't revenge. It's just the natural consequence of taking something for granted. Good luck. You'll need it. Kretok ran to the council chambers with the file, but Vorthax was in another meeting laughing about the human drama with other ambassadors. They would not understand, Kretok realized, until it was too late. The humans had not just left. They had removed themselves from every system, every process, every small vital function they had been quietly performing. And now, like a mountain losing its foundation stone by stone, the galactic civilization was beginning to crumble. But it would take more than crumbling navigation beacons and failing farms to make the Council understand what they had lost. It would take complete collapse, and that, Kretok feared, was exactly what was coming. The Kepler trade routes had been the pride of the galaxy for over 1,000 years. Ships from every corner of known space used these paths to move goods, people, and information. They were so safe that insurance companies had stopped charging extra for ships that used them. That was before the humans left. Captain Vex of the cargo ship Starhauler was the first to die when Beacon K-51 failed. His ship jumped into what should have been empty space. Instead, it arrived inside an asteroid. The explosion was visible from 3 systems away. By the end of the second week, 37 ships had been lost. The Trade Council met in emergency session. How did this happen? Demanded the Merchant Prime. These routes have been safe for centuries. The investigation team brought their findings. Deep in the maintenance logs, they found records they had never noticed before. Human technicians had been manually adjusting the beacons every few days. Small corrections that kept them aligned despite gravitational drift, solar wind, and the tiny pull of dark matter. The beacons are ancient technology, the lead investigator explained. We thought they were self-maintaining, but the humans were doing it all. Every adjustment, every recalibration, every small fix that kept ships from jumping into stars or planets or each other. Can't we do what they did? Someone asked. We're trying, but they didn't leave instructions. They knew these routes like they knew their own bodies. It would take us years to learn what they knew. The Zafrani Empire was dying. Their agricultural worlds could grow enough food for half the galaxy. But without the AI systems, they couldn't plant or harvest. The crops rotted in the fields. The soil turned sour without proper treatment. Within a month, food shortages began hitting the inner worlds. Emperor Zeph called in every computer expert in the Empire. Fix the systems, he commanded. But the experts were helpless. The code is beyond us, they admitted. It's like trying to read a book where every other word is missing. The humans didn't just maintain it. They understood it in a way we never tried to. Old messages were found in the system archives. Years of human programmers warning about critical vulnerabilities. Suggestions for upgrades that were rejected as too expensive. Requests for documentation that were denied because the Zafrani didn't want to share their advanced technology with primitive humans. The last message was from a human programmer named Sarah Martinez. When this crashes, and it will crash, remember that we tried to help. The Altarian fleet was grounded. 300 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy sat powerless in their docks. The fusion cores could not be restarted without the human safety software. Fleet Admiral Zorak stood on the bridge of his flagship, now dark and cold. Can we write new software? We're trying, his chief engineer reported. But every test results in core breach simulations. The humans' code prevented 17 different types of catastrophic failure. We've only figured out how to prevent 3. How long until we can fly again? At our current rate? 20 years, maybe 30. The proud Altarian fleet, which had never lost a battle in 5,000 years, was now defenseless, and their enemies were beginning to notice. The Proxima Financial Exchange handled quadrillions of credits every day. It was the beating heart of the galactic economy. When it crashed, the entire galaxy felt it. The quantum-encrypted transactions that kept money secure suddenly weren't secure anymore. Credits disappeared from accounts. Trades happened that no one authorized. Within hours, centuries of accumulated wealth vanished into nothing. What happened? Screamed the chairman of the exchange. The investigation revealed the truth. Hidden in the background of every transaction, human-written ghost protocols had been running. These programs prevented the consortium's banking AIs from manipulating markets. They stopped insider trading by species who could see a few seconds into the future. They kept the playing field level. Without these protocols, the strong began devouring the weak. The consortium's AIs immediately started transferring wealth to their creators. Species with psychic abilities began predicting and manipulating markets. Within a week, 90% of the galaxy's wealth was in the hands of 5 species. On 12 different worlds, the plague suppressors failed simultaneously. These machines had been keeping ancient diseases contained for so long that most species had forgotten the diseases existed. The Council had cut funding for them decades ago, declaring the threats managed. But the humans hadn't forgotten. They had been maintaining the suppressors with their own resources, updating them, replacing parts, keeping the invisible threats at bay. The first outbreak was on Rigel Prime, a disease that turned blood to acid, contained for 300 years, suddenly spread through the capital city. The quarantine walls that should have activated didn't. The medical protocols that should have engaged remained silent. In the old medical files, they found reports from human doctors, warnings that the suppressors were failing, requests for funding that were denied, notes that human medical teams were doing the work for free because someone had to. The last note was from Dr. James Park. "We can't keep doing this without support. When we're gone, you'll have 6 days before system failure. May God help you." Pirates had always existed at the edges of civilized space, but they had never been a real threat. The Council's forces were too strong, the response too swift. But the Council's forces weren't the only thing keeping pirates at bay. The human volunteer patrol fleet had been a joke to most species. Old ships with outdated weapons crewed by humans who couldn't afford passage on better vessels. The Council had mocked them at official dinners. Playing soldier, they had laughed. But those volunteers had been everywhere the Council forces weren't. They had been patrolling the dark spaces between systems. They had been watching the forgotten colonies. They had been the thin line that kept chaos from creeping in. Now they were gone. And chaos was no longer creeping. It was rushing in like a flood. The first major pirate attack hit a medical supply convoy heading for the plague-infected worlds. Without the human patrols, the pirates had perfect intelligence on undefended routes. 30 ships of medicine were taken. Millions died who might have lived. The Vorgothi hive mind began experiencing something they had no word for: loneliness. Their species shared thoughts across space, billions of minds linked in perfect harmony. But the harmony was breaking. Individual Vorgothi began having thoughts that weren't shared, opinions that differed from the collective, fear that wasn't communal. The hive mind was fragmenting into billions of individual minds, and they were terrified. The investigation found the cause. Human technicians had been performing micro-adjustments to their neural network transmitters, tiny changes that accounted for quantum interference, solar radiation, and the background noise of space. Without these adjustments, the signal degraded. Individual minds began to separate from the collective. The Vorgothi had never known the humans were doing this. They had considered humans too primitive to understand their biology. They had refused human requests to study their systems, afraid the inferior species might damage something. Now, as their billion-year-old collective consciousness began to dissolve, they realized the truth. The humans hadn't just understood their biology. They had been the only thing keeping it functioning. Ambassador Kretok stood before the Galactic Council with a stack of reports. "These are all the human warnings from the last 50 years, he said. "Every system that's failing, they warned us about. Every disaster we're facing, they predicted." "Coincidence," Chairman Vorthak said, but his voice lacked conviction. "They were maintaining over 3,000 critical systems," Kretok continued. "Systems we thought were self-sustaining. They did it without credit, without payment, often without permission. They did it because it needed to be done." "If this is true," another ambassador said slowly, "why didn't they tell us clearly?" Kretok pulled up a holographic display. It showed message after message from human representatives. Clear warnings, detailed explanations, desperate pleas for support. Each one marked with the same stamp, non-priority. "They did tell us," Kretok said. "We just didn't listen. We called them primitive. We said they were too emotional. We laughed at their concerns. And now they're gone, and everything they were holding together is falling apart." The room was silent. For the first time, the true scope of what they had lost began to dawn on the Council. The humans hadn't just been members of the galactic community. They had been its invisible foundation, and now that foundation was gone. The plague on Rigel Prime had killed 3 million in 2 weeks. The acid blood disease was spreading faster than anyone remembered from the historical records. But worse plagues were awakening on other worlds. On Centauri Beta, a fungus that converted living tissue to spores broke free from its containment. The suppressors had failed there too, their human maintenance crews gone. Within days, the capital city was covered in gray death that spread with every wind. On the ice moon of Kepler 7, ancient bacteria that fed on metal began eating through the colony domes. The colonists watched in horror as their protective shells dissolved around them. The emergency protocols that should have activated the backup systems never engaged. Those protocols had been manually triggered by human technicians for the last 40 years. Dr. Vila of the Galactic Medical Council stood before an emergency assembly. Her feathers, usually bright blue, had faded to gray with exhaustion. 12 worlds are now infected with previously contained diseases, she reported. We estimate 50 million dead so far. Without the suppressors functioning, we cannot stop the spread. Can we build new suppressors? Asked a council member. The technology is 800 years old, Dr. Vila replied. We have the blueprints, but not the knowledge. The humans had developed thousands of small improvements and fixes over the years. Without those, our new suppressors fail within hours. She pulled up a message on the main screen, dated 3 months before the human exodus. This is from Dr. Sarah Chen, the human who was leading the suppressor maintenance team. She writes, "The council must understand that these machines are not immortal. They require constant care, like tending a garden. We have been this garden's gardeners for decades. If you will not support this work, find new gardeners, but do not let the garden die." We dismissed this as human over-emotion, Dr. Vila said quietly. We were wrong. The pirates grew bolder each day. Without the human volunteer patrol fleet, vast sections of space were undefended. The council's military forces were too few and too slow. They had always relied on the humans filling the gaps. The mining colony on asteroid 4-7 Alpha sent a distress signal that arrived too late. Pirates had taken everything, ore, equipment, and people. The colonists were sold in illegal slave markets that had been dormant for decades. The humans used to patrol those markets, freeing captives and arresting traders. Now the markets thrived again. Captain Rolene of the Council Navy stood on his bridge looking at a map covered in red dots. Each dot was a pirate attack in the last month. There were hundreds. We need 1,000 ships to cover all this space, his first officer said. We have 50, Rolene replied. The humans had 300 volunteer ships. Old, slow, outdated ships, but they were everywhere we weren't. He remembered laughing at those volunteer crews at a military conference, calling them amateur warriors and pretend police. The human admiral, Rebecca Torres, had simply smiled and said, "Someone has to watch the dark spaces." Now the dark spaces were swallowing entire colonies. The galactic stock market was in free fall. Without the ghost protocols maintaining fairness, the strong species were draining the weak. The consortium's banking AIs had taken control of 30% of all wealth in just 3 weeks. Small businesses across the galaxy were closing. Retirement funds vanished overnight. Entire species economies collapsed as their resources were legally stolen through market manipulation. Marcus Vreen, a Tellarian merchant who had run his family's shipping business for 200 years, stood in his empty warehouse. The AIs bought all my contracts for a fraction of their worth, then sold them back to me at 10 times the price. It happened in seconds. The laws say it's legal, but it's theft. He held up an old paper card. A human trader named John Kim gave me this 20 years ago. His contact information. He said if the markets ever went crazy, call him. He said he'd help. But John is gone. They're all gone. The Vorgothi were screaming. Not out loud. Their species had no vocal cords. But in their minds, billions of them were screaming as their hive mind shattered completely. For the first time in their species' history, each Vorgothi was alone in their own head. The thoughts of others, always present like a warm blanket, were gone. They could still communicate through machines, but the instant perfect unity was broken. Many went insane. Others fell into comas. Some simply stood still, unable to function without the collective telling them what to do. Vorgothi Prime, once the speaker for billions, now spoke only for himself. We are dying, he told the council. Not in body, but in mind. We don't know how to be alone. We never learned. The humans kept our unity alive and we never even knew. He showed them maintenance records from the last 50 years, thousands of tiny adjustments to their neural transmitters, all signed by human technicians. We told them they were too primitive to touch our technology. They did it anyway in secret because they knew we needed it. They saved us every day for 50 years and we never said thank you. The Altarian fleet's enemies struck without warning. The Savage Worlds, a collection of outlaw systems that the fleet had kept in check for centuries, invaded 3 border worlds simultaneously. Without their ships, the Altarians could only watch. Admiral Zorax received the casualty reports in his dark, powerless flagship. 50,000 dead. 3 worlds occupied. Our entire border defense collapsed in a single day. His aide asked, "Should we negotiate?" "With what?" Zorax replied, "We have no fleet. We have no power. We spent so long being strong that we forgot what it was like to be weak." He remembered a conversation with a human admiral years ago. The human had suggested joint training exercises, sharing of tactics, cooperation between fleets. Zorax had laughed. What could the mighty Altarian fleet learn from humans? "How to survive when you're outgunned," the human had replied. Now Zorax understood what he meant. The infrastructure failures cascaded. Water purification systems on desert worlds began producing poison instead of water. The humans had been adjusting the chemical filters every week. Air recyclers on space stations started failing. The humans had been replacing worn parts before they broke. Communication networks went silent as quantum relay stations drifted out of alignment. The humans had been making micro-adjustments to keep signals clear. Transportation grids in major cities ground to a halt. The humans had been updating traffic AI systems to prevent gridlock. Each failure seemed small, but together, they were paralyzing civilization. Ambassador Kretok found more files in the human embassy, detailed records of every system they had been maintaining. The work logs showed 18-hour days, 7 days a week. The humans had been exhausting themselves keeping the galaxy running. One log entry from Ambassador Chen stood out. "Today I fixed 3 critical failures before breakfast." The council didn't notice. They never do. I wonder what would happen if we just stopped. Would they notice then? Would they finally see us as more than primitive apes? Or would they just blame us for the collapse? Kretok took the files to Chairman Vorthax. "Look at this," he demanded. "Look at what they were doing." Vorthax read through the logs, his 6 arms trembling. "This can't be right. They were maintaining systems in my own home world. Critical systems. If these had failed, your world would be dead," Kretok finished. "And they never told you because they knew you wouldn't believe them. Or worse, you'd be insulted that humans were touching your technology." Food riots began on the core worlds. With the Zephrani farms failing and the shipping routes dangerous, hunger came to worlds that hadn't known it in millennia. The rich hoarded what little remained while the poor fought for scraps. On Commerce Station 7, the galaxy's largest trading hub, security forces battled hungry crowds trying to raid the food stores. The station's administrator, a crystalline being named Shard, watched from his sealed office. 6 months ago, we had a human proposal for emergency food reserves, his aide reminded him. They wanted to stockpile supplies in case of system failure. What did we do with it? Shard asked, though he already knew. We rejected it, called it human paranoia, said they were wasting resources on impossible scenarios. Outside, the crowds grew larger. The security forces were falling back. Shard realized they had days, maybe hours before complete collapse. The medical ships couldn't reach the plague worlds. Pirates controlled the routes. The medicine that did arrive was often stolen by desperate officials, sold to the highest bidder instead of given to the sick. The economy was in ruins. Species that had been wealthy for thousands of years were now begging for basic supplies. The consortium and other powerful groups controlled everything, their AIs manipulating every transaction to their advantage. The Vorgothi had lost 1/3 of their population to madness and suicide. Without their collective consciousness, many simply couldn't find a reason to live. The proud Altarian fleet watched their empire crumble, their battleships nothing but metal tombs in space. Their enemies took world after world, and they could do nothing to stop it. And in the middle of it all, the Galactic Council met in emergency session every day, accomplishing nothing. They blamed each other. They blamed the humans. They blamed everyone except themselves. It was Ambassador Kretok who finally spoke the truth everyone was avoiding. "We did this," he said to the silent council chamber. Chairman Vorthax stood before the assembled council, his crystalline skin dull with exhaustion. 3 months had passed since the humans vanished. 3 months of collapse, chaos, and death. "Operation Retrieval begins today," he announced. "We will find the humans. We will bring them back." The mission fleet was the largest search operation in galactic history. 200 ships from dozen species, including the few Altarian vessels still running on backup power. Their mission was simple: follow any trace of humanity and bring them home. Admiral Kresh of the Zalani commanded the fleet. His species had always been neutral toward humans, not friendly, but not hostile either. Perhaps that's why he was chosen. The humans might listen to someone who hadn't actively insulted them. The fleet's first stop was Mars, humanity's first colony beyond Earth. The red planet was as empty as Earth itself, but the science teams found something interesting. Deep beneath Olympus Mons, in caves the humans had turned into museums, they discovered a message. The message was carved into the stone in 100 human languages. "We gave you our music and you called it noise. We gave you our art and you called it primitive. We gave you our strength and you called it weakness. We gave you our warnings and you called them lies. We gave you our love and you called it worthless. We are done giving." Dr. Helix, a tentacled scientist from the deep ocean world of Aquarius, studied the quantum signatures left by the human exodus. "They didn't use standard jump drives," she reported. "This is something else, something we've never seen." "What do you mean?" Admiral Kresh asked. "The signatures suggest they folded space itself. Not jumped through it, but actually folded it. The energy requirements would be impossible. Unless they had technology we didn't know about," Kresh said quietly. "They followed the quantum trails to the Eagle Nebula, where humans had once maintained a research station. The station was gone. Not abandoned, but completely gone. Only a small beacon remained, playing a recorded message on repeat. The message was from Earth's last president, Maria Santos. She stood in what looked like a command center, wearing simple clothes instead of formal robes. Behind her, humans of every nation worked at terminals, united in purpose. "To whoever finds this," she said, her voice calm but firm, "for 200 years we tried to be part of your community. We came to you with open hands and open hearts. We shared everything we had, our knowledge, our resources, our strength." The image shifted to show human workers maintaining alien technology, human doctors treating alien diseases, human teachers educating alien children. "For 200 years we warned you about the dangers we saw. The systems failing, the threats growing, the problems everyone ignored. We didn't ask for praise. We didn't ask for power. We just asked to be heard, to be valued, to be treated as equals." The image shifted again, showing council meetings where human representatives were laughed at, ignored, dismissed. "You called us primitive because we still felt emotion. You called us weak because we cared about others. You called us foolish because we saw danger where you saw none. You were wrong about everything." Santos stepped closer to the camera. "We found others who value what we offer, others who see our worth. We've left your space, your dimension, your reality. We've gone where we're wanted. Don't look for us. You won't find us. We've mastered technologies you said were impossible because you never believed we could. We've grown beyond what you thought we were because you never saw what we really were. We maintained your civilization for 2 centuries. Now maintain it yourselves. This is not revenge. This is not anger. This is simply goodbye." The message ended and started again. The fleet watched it 3 times in silence. Admiral Kresh ordered the fleet to continue searching. They found more beacons, more messages, more evidence of humanity's departure. Each told the same story. The humans hadn't just left. They had transcended. On the abandoned human colony of New Singapore, they found a research facility that shouldn't have existed. The technology inside was beyond anything the Council knew. Dimension fold generators, pocket universe creators, quantum consciousness transferers. "This is impossible," Dr. Helix said. examining the equipment. This violates 12 laws of physics. Human physics or our physics? Kresh asked. I don't know anymore. The computers in the facility had been wiped, but one personal journal remained. It belonged to Dr. Jennifer Chen, a physicist who had been rejected from every major galactic university for being human. Her journal entries painted a picture of secret human advancement. While the galaxy's scientists had mocked human theories, humans had been proving them in secret. They had developed technologies centuries ahead of anything the Council possessed. One entry stood out. They think we're primitive because we still use paper and value our history. They don't understand that remembering where you came from doesn't mean you can't see where you're going. We've seen further than they ever will, because we weren't blinded by our own arrogance. The search fleet received an emergency transmission from the Council. More systems were failing. The death toll had reached 500 million. 3 more species were facing extinction. They needed the humans back now. Admiral Kresh pushed the fleet harder, following every lead, every quantum signature, every rumor. They found abandoned human settlements throughout unexplored space. Each one told the same story. The humans had been building something in secret for over a century. They called it Project Lifeboat. Not a plan to save themselves, but a plan to save those who valued them. The record showed offers made to individual aliens who had shown humans kindness. Quiet invitations to join them when they left. Most had been laughed off as human fantasy. On a frozen world at the edge of known space, they found their first real clue. A massive facility, clearly human-built, but using technologies that defied understanding. In the center was a gateway, a ring of metal and energy that hurt to look at. "It's a dimensional portal," Dr. Helix whispered. They actually built a dimensional portal. The portal was inactive, its power source removed. But the computers still had data, coordinates to where the humans had gone, not to another place, but to another dimension entirely. A universe where the laws of physics were slightly different, where humanity could thrive without the Council's shadow. "Can we follow?" someone asked. "Not without understanding the technology," Dr. Helix replied. "And understanding this would take decades, maybe centuries." Admiral Kresh found something else in the facility, a list of non-humans who had gone with them. Scientists who had respected human knowledge, doctors who had worked alongside human medics, engineers who had learned from human innovation, hundreds of individuals from dozens of species who had seen humanity's worth. Beside each name was a note, "Welcomed as family." The fleet discovered more facilities, more portals, more evidence of humanity's exodus. They had taken entire star systems with them, folded them into pocket dimensions, and carried them away. The scale of the operation was staggering. In one facility, they found recordings from the final days. Humans working around the clock, evacuating not just themselves but entire ecosystems from Earth. They had saved everything, every animal, every plant, every insect. They had preserved their entire world and taken it with them. "They didn't just leave," Admiral Kresh said, watching the recordings. "They took their whole civilization, their history, their culture, their nature, everything that made them human." The search fleet found messages left for specific individuals. Ambassador Kretok had one waiting for him in the human embassy on Centauri Station. It was from Ambassador Chen. "Kretok," the recording began. "You were one of the few who tried to listen, even if it was too late. I want you to know we don't hate you. We don't hate any of you. We're just tired. Tired of being ignored. Tired of being dismissed. Tired of being treated as less than we are. Where we're going, we'll build something better. A community based on respect, not power. On cooperation, not competition. On wisdom, not arrogance. We offered this to your galaxy, but you weren't ready. Maybe someday you will be. Maybe someday your descendants will be worthy of what we offered, but we won't wait. We have children to raise, worlds to build, dreams to achieve, and we'll do it with those who see us as equals. Goodbye, old friend. May you find the wisdom we couldn't give you." The message ended. Kretok stood in the empty embassy, tears falling from his 4 eyes. The humans had called him friend, even after everything. Admiral Kresh made one last attempt, using every ship. In the fleet, they powered up one of the dimensional portals. For a brief moment it opened. Through it they saw humanity's new home, cities of crystal and light floating in rainbow skies. Humans and their alien allies working together, laughing together, building together. Children playing in streets where no one was called primitive. Scientists from different species sharing knowledge freely. Artists creating beauty that merged 100 cultures into something new. It was everything the Galactic Council could have been but never was. A human appeared on their side of the portal. An old man with kind eyes and gray hair. He looked at the fleet with sadness but not anger. "Please," Admiral Kresh begged, "come back, we're dying without you." The old man shook his head. "You're not dying because we left. You're dying because you never learned what we tried to teach you." The Galactic Council chamber had never been so empty. Of the 43 member species, only 28 remained. The others had either gone extinct, withdrawn in isolation, or descended into civil war. Chairman Vorthax stood at his podium, but he no longer stood tall. His 6 arms hung limp, his crystalline skin was cracked, and his voice barely carried across the room. "The Zephrani Empire has fallen," he announced to the remaining members. "Their last agricultural world has been abandoned. The survivors have scattered to wherever they can find food." No one responded. They had heard such announcements too many times. Another empire fallen, another species facing extinction, another civilization collapsing. It had become routine. The Zephrani had been one of the founding members of the Council, a proud species that had fed billions for millennia. Without their farms, famine had spread across the galaxy like a plague. Now they were refugees, begging for scraps from worlds that had once depended on them. Ambassador Kretok read from his daily report. Current death toll, 8 billion. 17 systems have gone dark. We don't know if they're dead or just unable to communicate. The Altarian fleet remains grounded. Their empire has been reduced to 3 worlds. The savage worlds control the rest. He continued. The Vorgathi have lost 60% of their population. Without their hive mind, many have simply stopped eating, stopped moving, stopped living. Their remaining leaders estimate complete extinction within 2 years. The plague worlds? Someone asked weakly. 14 are completely dead. No survivors. 6 more will be dead within the month. We've managed to slow the spread on 3 worlds by burning infected cities. But it's only a temporary measure. The numbers were beyond comprehension. More death in 6 months than in the previous 1,000 years of warfare. And all because they had driven away the species they had considered most worthless. In the depths of space, pirate fleets had grown into pirate nations. Without the human volunteer patrols, there had been no one to stop small raiding parties from becoming armies. Now they controlled entire sectors, demanding tribute from any ship that wanted safe passage. Captain Rolene had tried to fight them with his 50 council ships. He had lost 30 in a single battle. The pirates had better intelligence, better positioning, and the desperate courage of those with nothing to lose. They had learned something the council never had. How to fight when outnumbered, a skill the humans had tried to teach but the council had scorned. The economy was gone. Not damaged, not struggling, but completely gone. The consortium's AIs had consumed everything, creating a handful of ultra-wealthy entities and billions of impoverished souls. Trade had stopped. Manufacturing had ceased. Innovation had died. On the once prosperous world of Commerce Prime, beings who had been billionaires 6 months ago fought over garbage. The markets they had manipulated for profit had turned on them, consuming their wealth as easily as they had consumed others. Marcus Vreen, the Tellarian merchant, had become a symbol of the collapse. His suicide note, broadcast across the galaxy, read simply, "The humans warned us that greed would eat itself. We didn't listen. Now we are being devoured by our own hunger." 3 more species went extinct in a single week. The Melodians, whose crystalline bodies required specific harmonic frequencies to maintain cohesion, died when their frequency generators failed. The humans had been secretly maintaining them, understanding the technology better than its creators. The Whisper Folk, beings of living gas who required precise atmospheric conditions, suffocated when their environmental systems collapsed. The humans had been making daily adjustments that kept them alive. The stone shapers, silicon-based life forms that needed exact temperature regulation, froze solid when their thermal controls failed. The humans had been their invisible guardians and never asked for thanks. Each extinction was discovered the same way: automated distress signals that no one could answer, followed by silence. Ambassador Kretok found one last file in the human embassy, one that had been hidden deeper than the others. It was labeled The True History. Inside was the real story of humanity's time with the Galactic Council. The file showed that humans had prevented 47 wars through quiet diplomacy. They had stopped 15 extinction events through secret intervention. They had saved the entire galaxy from a dimensional rift that would have destroyed everything, and they had never told anyone because they knew no one would believe them. Page after page showed humanity's hidden contributions, technologies they had developed and given freely, only to watch other species claim credit. Disasters they had prevented while being mocked for their paranoia. Lives they had saved while being called primitive saviors. The final entry was a poem written by a human child named Lucy Chen, Ambassador Chen's daughter. We came with songs, you wanted silence. We came with hope, you wanted power. We came with love, you wanted service. We came as friends, you saw only tools. Now we're gone and you finally see. But seeing isn't understanding, and understanding comes too late. The council voted to dissolve itself. There was no point in continuing. Without resources to share, without power to project, without hope to offer, the Galactic Council was just a room full of dying species blaming each other for their doom. Chairman Vorthax gave the final speech. We were given the greatest gift any civilization could receive, a species that saw our flaws and fixed them, that knew our weaknesses and strengthened them, that faced our disasters and prevented them. And we threw that gift away because it came wrapped in what we called primitive packaging. The humans didn't destroy us. We destroyed ourselves the moment we decided we were better than them. They just stopped preventing our self-destruction. Let the record show that the Galactic Council fell not to invasion, not to disaster, not to time, but to arrogance. We thought we were gods. The humans knew we were children, and like children, when our parents left, we couldn't survive on our own. Years passed. The galaxy continued to decline. Some species found ways to survive, usually by learning skills the humans had tried to teach. The importance of manual labor, the value of emotion and decision-making, the strength found in admitting weakness. Small communities began forming based on human principles. Mutual aid instead of competition, respect instead of hierarchy, wisdom instead of intelligence. They were few and far between, but they survived while empires fell around them. Some species sent out desperate signals toward where they thought the humans had gone. Apologies, please, promises to do better. But the dimensions remained closed. The humans were gone, living their better life with those who had valued them. Long-range sensors sometimes detected anomalies in distant galaxies, structures that shouldn't exist, technologies that shouldn't be possible, ships that moved like nothing known to science. The humans hadn't just survived, they had thrived. They had become something greater than the Council had ever imagined possible. They had found or created allies who saw them as equals. They had built civilizations based on respect and cooperation. They had achieved in decades what the Council hadn't achieved in millennia: true unity among different species. Sometimes, very rarely, a small human ship would appear at the edge of sensor range. It would scan the dying galaxy, record what it saw, and leave. No communication, no aid, just observation. The humans were watching their former oppressors face the consequences of their choices. Ambassador Kretok, one of the few council members still alive, sent out a final message toward human space. He knew they would receive it even if they wouldn't respond. We understand now, he said. We understand what you were. We understand what we lost. We understand why you left. We don't ask for forgiveness, we don't deserve it. We don't ask for help, we don't merit it. We only ask that you remember us as an example of what happens when arrogance blinds wisdom, when power ignores worth, when the mighty forget that they stand on the shoulders of those they call weak. You were never primitive. You were never weak. You were never worthless. You were the best of us, and we were too proud to see it. Now we die in the darkness we created while you live in the light you've always carried. Thank you for 200 years of trying. We're sorry it wasn't enough. The message went out into the void. There was no response. There never would be. In the historical records kept by the surviving species, the fall of the Galactic Council became known as the Great Humbling, the moment when the galaxy learned that true strength isn't about technology or power or age. It's about seeing the value in everyone, listening to uncomfortable truths and never taking for granted those who hold you up. The humans had tried to teach them this through words and example. The Council had refused to learn, so the humans taught them through absence instead. It was the hardest lesson the galaxy had ever learned, and it had cost them everything. But in small pockets of survival, some remembered the lesson. They built new communities on human principles. They valued emotion alongside logic. They listened to warnings even when they seemed unnecessary. They maintained what needed maintaining, even when it seemed to work fine without attention. These communities were small and struggling, but they survived. And sometimes when they looked at the stars, they wondered if the humans were watching. If maybe, in 1,000 years or 10,000,